I was hoping a little diagram might be helpful, so we'll see. Okay, as I said, on my sock I cast on 14 stitches. Now that's because across each side, front and back, I wanted 26 stitches. That's the measurement I'm using, and I call that A. Okay, this measurement here I call A. So the number down here is 1/2 of A. Now, because half of 26 was 13, I had the choice of going with 12 or 14. I went with 14 and then increased every other row on each end on both sides up to 26 stitches. So if you increase 2 stitches every other row, it's the same number-wise as increasing 1 stitch every row. Okay, that is important. Don't lose that one. Okay, for your gusset, for the gusset back here, what you're going to need at its widest point, it's going to be 2 times A, and in my case 52 stitches for the back needle for the gusset. Then whenever I come back up here for my heel flap, that goes back to A and up the leg for a plain vanilla sock. Okay, what I have found in making socks these years is if I just add 2 stitches with that heel flap, then putting the sock on is so much easier, and it has no bearing at all on the fit of the sock. But the ease the sock goes on is a huge difference. So I add 2 extra stitches. So instead of coming back to 26 stitches, whenever I come back and make my heel flap is going to actually be, 28 stitches on those back needles, and I'll still have 26 stitches on my front needles. And I hope that's helpful, because I think it gets really, people get caught up in patterns and the number of stitches for this. This will work. You can incorporate any pattern as far as a stitch pattern that you want if you have A, half of A, 2 times A, and back to A. Now, like I said, I add those 2 stitches on my heel flap just because I found that it makes the sock easier to put on for everyone. Because what would happen is whenever it just went back to A with that heel flap, there was a real bind right here around the front of the foot, and I don't know, maybe I come from a long line of or something that have I don't know, but anyway, that's what I found, is those extra 2 stitches make a huge difference. Now I'm going to show you on my socks how it's easy to calculate when and how this is going to happen. Okay, so let me grab him here. Boy, I just tossed him down there, didn't I? Okay. Now for a man's sock, size 11 to 12, it says sock length to be 11 inches. Now, let me make sure we're not going to pull anything off a needle, because that is not the end of the world, but it certainly is not fun. I've already finished the heel flaps. Okay, so this length right here, I'm choking myself up. Okay, should be, oh, let's lay you down. Should be, well, look at that, it's 11 inches. Now, what I do while I'm working on my sock is I count, oopsie, get a handy dandy thing to count with. Okay, because we have rows and stitches. Okay, so I know I'm going to have 26 stitches. Increasing every other row 2 stitches is the same as increasing 1 stitch every row. So if I'm going to double this, that means it's going to take me 26 rows to double my stitches. Make sense? This is 26 stitches, and so I put a marker. Then I know that half of 26 will account for the short rows. Okay, still following me? The short rows are going to take up half of the, it's going to use half as many rows to make my short rows as it did to increase by 2. So that means 13. So it's going to take 13 rows after that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I'm going to grab another stitch marker. I'm curious if anybody else, are you constantly opening packages of stitch markers? I think I just leave them in projects and forget. They're probably in dryers all over the county. Okay, so, and there's 13. If we measure that total distance, I flopped you over there too. I'm just flopping things everywhere. Then, well, how about that? That's pretty darn close to 4 inches, smidge over 4 inches. So whenever I'm knitting, if I know I'm going to 11 inches, then I know I need, because here's where my first increase for my gusset started, and it's just under 7 inches. So that was where I knew I needed to begin my gusset, because my gusset and then my heel flap were going to take this many rows to create. And on this sock, I have them marked as I did them. Oops, where'd that slide? On this sock, this row is where I began my gusset, started increasing. Okay, and then whenever I got up here, that's where I began making short rows, and they went to here. And altogether, that length is the same as this length that I predicted. Easy. Me flopping socks and everything around and markers and trying to make it easier to understand, because it's really not complicated. Even though as I'm working them, doing heels on socks will forever be magical to me, because I love the way that it comes together. These are really the only numbers you have to remember. However many stitches it takes to make one side of the circumference of your instep or whatever. I think it's the instep. But anyway, across the top of the foot, you cast on half of that, work up to that, continue to work until you get to the distance that it's going to take for your gusset and heel flap. I'm sorry, your gusset and short rows. And then you work back down, your heel flap, you work back down to this number again. So it sounds far more complicated than it actually is. I hope you find the numbers in the chart and things. I hope you find it helpful. It was really helpful for me whenever I started making socks to write these things out, because I kept reading patterns and they seem to have things in common, but I couldn't figure out exactly what it was. And then it was like, oh, well, that's just half of that, and that's twice of that, and then I'm back to the original number. So that's really all it amounts to, and I do hope that that helps you understand what comes after. So we will get back to the actual nuts and bolts. Well, not in your shoes. Fun, create something someone will use, and I hope you have people like this in your life. I do. And this person is a joy to make things for because he is so appreciative of the work that went into it. And anyway, it's just fun. It's fun to give things to him. Now, I use the same kind of increase that I used for the toe. It's just my favorite. Well, I think it's probably my favorite increase overall in knitting in general. So I have 26 stitches across. I'm going to go up to 52 stitches. Knit the first one, and then go down into the stitch. I'm going to zoom in just a smidge. Then I'm going to go down into that stitch below, knit in there, and then knit into the stitch itself. Knit across. To the last 2 stitches. Going to knit the next to the last stitch, pull up the bar from the row below, the stitch from the row below, and then knit into that also, and then knit the last stitch. I'm going to do the same thing for the second sock. Down to the last 2 stitches, knit the next to the last stitch, pick up the stitch below, knit into the back of that, and then knit the last stitch. Turn my work, and I pull just till it's at the beginning, pull the other one out, push this one in. Oopsie. Now on the front of the sock, all I'm going to do is knit across. The increases are only on the back for the gusset of the sock. Let me grab a sock. Oops, zoom out. Okay, so this was the front of the sock. It was made recently, but when you turn it over, this is what's on the back needle. All of this is on the back needle. Okay, and so, although this is the front needle folded in half, twice as wide here is we're building up on the back needle. And then just increase every other row, 1 stitch each end every other row, which will equal 26 rows for me. The same number of stitches as the width is how many rows it takes to accomplish doubling. Okay, so, and then we'll begin the short rows. And I do wrapped short rows. I love them. I tried a lot of different ones, different methods that I saw online, and in books whenever I first began making socks. And I love the wraps. I love the way they look. Oops, can't be a Sheila hair. I like the neatness. I just love the regular wraps. So see, that's the way the foot looks. Okay, and so I will meet you back after I make all of my increases. And I have 52 stitches on the back side for each sock.